Hey, what is going on, people? So we basically are midweek now, which is actually quite nice. You know, a lot of pairs have really played out this week. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I had a lot of missed positions today and yesterday. Actually, throughout this whole week, it's been a missed position week for me. But you know, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because you know, there's an abundance of opportunity, and I think that's something that you need to take in as well. That you know, when you are in that abundant mindset, you're not worried about missing positions because you know there's a lifetime of opportunities ahead of you and you're actually trading for the long run. So it is what it is with the missed positions. I will kind of just jump into things now. So just starting off with the DXY. So yeah, essentially with the DXY, we have basically done exactly what we were looking for, which is, you know, not always the case, but in this case, we have basically created that correction for the upside movement now. So even though originally we did see this sort of price structure here, we always knew that, you know, this wasn't really enough. This was more so the gameplay, and then when we had that low, we kind of just had that ability to tap into that, and we did have that obvious rejection. Now that came off a bit of news volatility, so it wasn't the easiest to catch. That's something you have to always bear in mind as well. Now that's why personally I always find that mapping out your news and your high impact news and whatnot can always play a part, because when this happens, you would have potentially been able to capture a position in this area, but it's not always the best because you're catching a falling knife and it's very quick. Usually this can be within a matter of minutes, so a penning order can be suitable in these areas, but you have to understand what risk it comes with, and it can just hold a lot more risk because it can drop off even further and just extend. But cases, if the position was taken over here, you would have probably taken roughly around about a stop loss around about, you know, you could have squeezed it in with roughly around about, call it 20 pips just to be extra safe, 15 to be more on the riskier side, and then you would have had more so around about, call it about 40 pips there just to protect yourself. So with a 40 pip stop loss, you know, to this high, you'd have the potentially just around about a 3-to-1, but at the same time you'd be running around about 2%. With the 15 pip stop loss, which would have been the aggressive sort of play, you would be running about 5%. But even so, either position would have been pretty good, and we'll see that with Euro USD how that also correlated and how you would have taken advantage of that. But moving into the next pair, which is Euro Aussie, first off the watch list, we can basically see with Euro Aussie that we have this very, very nice sort of tap up now. Now there was a very good opportunity to potentially get involved with this position down here, which we saw. Then we came up, we kind of pushed lower, and I think this gameplay is more than likely. However, bear in mind that we do have this potential 1, 2, 3 shaping up here, but I think this is obviously a very, very good gameplay to be keeping an eye on as well. I think us reaching up to these areas would be very nice. So it can take some time to shape up. It could be towards March, you know, we're ready, but really and truly keep your eye on that for sure. But we can drop off from here. There's more than enough to say, you know, this little bit of price structure can drop off, but looking at how this is parallel and how it's looking really nice in the shape of kind of, you know, just kind of scooping up again, I think there's a strong possibility that we could see a strong euro and a declining US dollar as well across the future. But at the moment, this strong euro AUD would definitely look as a strong potential. So this is essentially the gameplay I'd be looking at. The only time I would be looking for a short, and I wouldn't really be looking for a short right now, is probably an aggressive sell-off and then something to kind of just pull us into the downside. But at the moment we are looking aggressively bullish, so don't be looking to just jump into a short. And yeah, that's basically the outlook for it. So it's plain and simple. Obviously EA is definitely going to be one that I probably won't be eyeing up as much, but if we do get some sort of larger correction over here, there could be an advantage to take that to the upside. And then in terms of a risk reward, if we just switch this up now, and it's funny how that happens, where you can be looking for shorts and then all of a sudden a bit of data can change things. And let's just say you even take a 25 pip stop loss at a third touch, and then you take that to the high, there's potentially a 10% on the table there. Now the likelihood of the pattern being here is very possible, but it could be further up, meaning that obviously, you know, stop loss could be a little bit bigger, less, but at the same time, you know, we can always potentially squeeze in a tighter stop loss as well, and then to that high there could potentially be a 20% position, could even be somewhere in 15. You know, it just doesn't really matter as long as you can protect yourself, which is the main important thing. So that's basically my outlook for EA. Moving on to GA. GA is looking very, very nice. I think, you know, looking at the EA play with us potentially looking bullish, I think if GA does also go bullish, because they do tend to move together, we could potentially see that GA makes it up to this area here. And if GA starts to fill this area here, then we could potentially see a sell-off together, which would be very, very nice. And then we could potentially make it back down to these lows or even this low. So that's definitely something I'll be keeping my eye on. I think in terms of an alert, if you were just to set an alert, just because you may not even be looking at this particular chart, an alert would be suitable in that area. Bear in mind that we did decline ever so slightly from this over here, and now it looks like we are creating some sort of correction over here. I wouldn't get caught up in this price action so much, in my opinion, just because of how price is and where we're going. As we have this sort of high here, we tapped into this, we didn't quite touch, well, we did actually break just above it, but like I said, it's not really the typical price structure I would kind of jump into. I'm not saying that this couldn't really play out, like it comes up and then just drops off and goes there. You know, that's always a possibility, but you know, it's in terms of a risk reward, it could or could not be very nice. I'm not too sure. It depends how you want to protect yourself. You know, you might even be able to take in a 3% there, but yeah, I'm not too sure. I wouldn't entertain that trade personally. I mean, I would leave GA alone until we start reaching them higher value areas. So definitely keep your eye on those higher value areas, because that's where the money's really going to be made. Moving on to the next one, which is GBP CAD. GBP CAD is looking pretty nice. I mean, what I do like about this is we did have that rejection from this low and we did push up quite aggressively. So when we did think it was a little bit too late, it seems like we are coming in and creating something a little bit larger, which in my opinion is something that I would very much prefer to take for a long, only on the pure basis that, you know, if we are able to take this long position, you know, then this could be a very nice gameplay. I would wait for a little bit more structure personally, you know, something like that, but the likelihood of that really playing out is quite low in my opinion. I don't think that this is honestly going to be the gameplay, so I'd be a little bit more patient. I think I'm still going to stay neutral and look at this original forecast that we had and, you know, just kind of go with that, because we've always known that there's always been a possibility for us to correct and go down. We haven't really convincingly kind of started pushing up yet, even though we have this sort of triple bottom and then mini double bottom within it. As we know, that's more than enough for it to go higher. So I'm not looking for perfection here, but I am looking for, you know, something to kind of just give me a little bit of a reference that I'll be able to get a good entry. But even so, if it's a misentry, it's a misentry. It is what it is. Like I said, there could be potentially a nice little price point for us to pivot from here. We just have to keep an eye on that for sure. But like I said, this is not the price action that I'll be looking to get involved in. Next one I'll be looking at is CAD Yen. CAD Yen is basically really nice. So originally I did have a short position here. We did come back up, we filled that price, tagged me in for 1% there, and then I did try take a scaling position. It was a bit aggressive on my behalf, and then it did encounter with a small 1% loss, which kind of totaled everything to a break even. So in that case, it didn't really matter to me, but yeah, so I was looking for basically a continuation. So once we broke this line in the sand here, essentially I was basically looking for price to push below. So once we broke that, I was looking for price to kind of just break below and then create continuation. What I did like about this at the time, and I'll just replay this over here, was these 2 points here. So, and I'll just quickly remove this for simplicity. So we tapped into this 1, 2, 3. We then kind of pushed off. We had a small correction here on the 5 minute. Wasn't the very cleanest, to be honest, as well, but there was a correction in here as well. And then from here, once we broke that line in the sand, we basically started ranging. As you can see, we had 2 bottoms there, and we started to create this. So as we correctively started moving to this high, that's kind of where I kind of opted in and said that's a very good area for me to potentially look to go short, as it would be validated on 15-minute as well. So there was kind of more than enough for me to say I'm happy to take this position. So as it played on, we had the aggressive push up here, and then at that point there I should have waited a little bit more, and then as we had this, that's when I kind of should have taken a message from the market and been like, okay, I'm not really playing through. And then as we had this sort of retrace, I was kind of then thinking, you know, we've kind of tested this, taken out some orders there. I'll take a position here. Took a position at this short here, then had my stops just around about there, 15 pips, just covering a little bit above this, and then that's where I kind of got taken out very shortly after. And when this happened, I was at this point here, I could have potentially just said, you know, I'll lock in some profit or tighten up my stop a little bit, but then it didn't really give me any commitment. And then as I was waiting, we came back into this price and I was quite happy, so I walked away from the charts, and then behold, just kind of trickled back up and then took me out. So it is what it is. There was room to lock in 1% at that point there, so I could have locked in at 1%, but I was away from the charts at that point, so I just kind of just didn't really care, and it was what it was. So then price kind of had that huge volatile spike and tapped into that high, and then here we are. So looking at current price now, we have to kind of evolve with current structure. And what I do like about this is that if we just remove all of this now, and even with this major high being tapped in, what we can see is we're getting a little bit of an extension, which is something that's always a little bit better as well in terms of a gameplay. So waiting for this little extension here, however it forms, not really to bottom, it's not really fully confirmed at this point, but we could be getting this nice little middle section play out here, and then if we get that middle section, we'll get a gameplay here, and then this can potentially come in for the 1, 2, 3, and we'll be able to take that trade there. So that's basically the entry there where I'll be looking to potentially go short, but because given the circumstance where we're going to be up here, we could just have a little extra push, 100 pips, and we could push even further. So understand the risk that involves there, because we are close to this high over here. So eyes on that, but we don't have to tap into that, but just bear in mind that it is a possibility that we could, and we can also still drop off from current price action as well. We don't have to come all the way up here, we can still drop off. So understand those 2 points there, but this is more so one of the reasons I'll look for this, and I think looking at GY as well will give you a little bit more clarity on why this is definitely still a very strong possibility. So moving on to GY now, looking at GBP yen, I think GBP yen actually is now kind of giving a little bit more off a sell-off sort of vibe, but at the same time we can still have this, which I think becomes less and less probable as it more so as it sells off. But this sort of price action here is giving me those middle section vibes, so more than happy to kind of wait for this one to kind of give a little bit more before any short play is taken. I was originally looking to take a short in here. It is what it is. Unfortunately, it did kind of just start sinking off, and I could have potentially still managed this position, but really and truly I think at this current moment in time, I think there's a little bit more in here. We haven't really tapped into this override point over there. We have filled this mini override and then started selling off, but I think because we've got so close to this override, just give it some time. I think it could just get a little bit more messy and then just correct and then tap into that. So I would definitely wait and keep my eyes on GUI. If we are down here selling off and we do create something, then for sure we can look for a sell position, but don't be surprised if we do gravitate and fill this override. So the next one I'll be looking at is also Euro Yen. The nice thing about Euro Yen is we've actually filled in all of this price now. So we have basically come into the high and filled that in, but we have to look at the larger higher time frame. And the higher time frame does show that there is bull momentum. Now we did get a push away from this non-confirmed bottom, but we did even so get a push away. We created this expanding, which isn't also the cleanest, but definitely still there. Is it still in this corrective price? Yeah, absolutely. It still is within here, but at the same time, This can now give us enough momentum to now create a correction and continue going higher, and then we can feel this greater pattern here. But then if we zoom out even further, we can see that we are in a much larger pattern as well. So this was a very nice pattern to potentially position ourselves to get in for the larger move. However, given the circumstance of where price is and how price is moving, it could be a very slow burner, or it could be very aggressive. At this point in time, this price is very corrective, and I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, we did get a sell-off and it came down a little bit more and we kind of created a floor before we went higher, or if we just continued going bullish and then we filled this 1 2 3, came down and then created something larger, or we just continued. More so continuing is what I'm kind of banking on, but we'll have to wait and see, because right now this is kind of giving me that sort of running channel sort of vibe. We still have to wait and see how it goes, but at the moment we do need to see how price develops. There's the strong possibility that now we can just look at that bull momentum on this, and if we do see that, it's a possibility that we can also see that across a few other yen pairs, but more so EJ is looking very bullish. I would be very sharp with that and not look for a short in these areas at the moment. Just be very mindful, even though we have a 1 2 3 and this is the 4th test, so keep that in mind. Moving over to the wildcards, we have USD yen. Now USD yen, we've always known, looking at the DXY, that, you know, there's the room to potentially come down here. However, we can still just gravitate and create the larger correction before we come in and fill this, because we don't have to. Given how the DXY is moving and looking how bullish it is, it does look like a strong possibility that right now we can just see the USD yen pair just continue trickling and potentially come over here or extend and go to one of these points up here. So I am now looking at either a sell-off and then a continuation pattern to the downside in these regions below, or we just continue trickling and making our way up to override 1, and then we can evaluate price carefully from there. However, I would not be surprised if we did just get to one of these points and then aggressively sell off like this, and then, you know, kind of feel a little bit beaten up at that point. But at the same time, don't feel beaten up, because, you know, you could begin a sell-off like this, but then you have to realize how far in the run are you really, you know, and that was just the beginning of the run. You know, that sell-off was the beginning of this huge run. So it's the same thing with this. You know, you might get a big sell-off here and think, oh my gosh, it's huge, I've just missed out on so much. But then what you really trading, you know, there's so much room to actually get involved. So don't feel missed out at all. The next one I'll be looking at is Euro USD. Now, Euro USD was one that we've definitely been looking at. It's one that I was a little bit upset that I missed out on, but I couldn't do anything about it, because honestly, when the news hit, it was just too late for me. You know, I can just drill down to the 5 minute as well. You'll see it here. You know, by the time I would have seen this, and I missed it twice to be fair, the price went up and then just literally just sold off in seconds. Just wasn't able to catch it as well. I don't know if I'll be able to see it on the minute chart, but I wouldn't even go there. And it just kind of went up and went down, came up. So it was just very volatile at that point. Wouldn't even want to be in that price action, but setting a pending order there would have been somewhat beneficial. But at the same time, given how price action wasn't really for me. When price did come back up to these areas, I did contemplate taking an entry. I just completely missed out on it, unfortunately. So it is what it is. I think right now, just given how this pair is, we could potentially see price give us some sort of entry. Is it how possible? I'm not too sure at this point in time. You know, I think if it can correct and come up here, maybe there might be an entry to go short, and that will be the one that a lot of people will be looking at. But you know, it is what it is. If it's a misentry, it's a misentry. At the end of the day, we'll just have to wait and see. But for sure, this was phenomenal. It was exactly as we forecasted. A bit of news to piggyback off. It was just my fault for obviously, I mean, actually, to be fair, there was no fault at action. I saw it, I decided that I didn't want to take it, and I was happy with the choices that I made, and I think that was it, plural. But you know, looking at this, I think potentially even with a 15 pip stop loss, not really required. You could probably squeeze it a little bit less. You know, to that low, you'd probably be looking at another 20%. So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You know, when you size things up like that, and if you can catch a nice entry like this, you could definitely still position yourself quite well in the market. So let's just wait and see how EU is. I'll definitely keep that one eye on that one for sure. I think in terms of pairs, you know, I'll mark them off after, but EU and GJ for sure. AU is a bit of a mistrade for me as well. Same thing with the volatility, volatility came in, spiked, and then I missed a re-entry. It is what it is. There was definitely a good entry over here, which I could have taken advantage of. Would have been running somewhat of a decent profit. I mean, to the low, I think it would have been around about 3%. Currently running about 2% odd, but there was definitely that risk entry sort of territory up here, which I think would have definitely been in a lot of people's favor. And yeah, it would have been roughly about 4 to 7% position. So, not bad at all. I think still very nice. And then to that sort of larger move is in there, but like I said, sometimes you miss them, sometimes you get them, but at least we forecasted them and we understood what was happening. So at the end of the day, there was some solid trades in there. It was forecasted from all the way from last week, the week before. So that's the very nice thing about this, is that we planned way ahead for these trades, and then they did work out in the end. So it shows that we have a very good sense of market direction. We have a very good sense of control over the market and anticipation and so forth. But the best part is that obviously, even though the trade was missed, we stayed compelled and we didn't FOMO and make those terrible decisions that most would. So plural of the story is you can miss trades, but at the end of the day, you can't beat somebody's mindset. So it is what it is. There could be another entry shaping up. We could get some sort of correction down here, but then you trade it to that low, and this can still come back up for another touch before it goes. Very unlikely, but possible. USD CAD. USD CAD it got a little bit messy, to be honest. I think, to be honest, I'm looking at the short still. I am still looking at the short position. So given the circumstance of how price is, this is somewhat in my favor right now, because I was originally looking at something like this. It just became very messy, that volatile spikes there, but it's more so of this expanding. But right now, I think if we do get a rejection and we get a continuation, we could take this short play to the low. But because given how the USD CAD is moving right now, this could shape up to be something completely different to what we expect. So keep a good eye on this, boys and girls. Honestly, I'm telling you, this can shape up to surprise you, and when it does play out, you're going to be pretty astonished, to be honest. So take that bit of price by itself and look at that. And if we can do this, and then let's just say that we kind of just move this over here, there's the possibility that we can extend, tap into that high, and then come to the low. So understand this, because this could be a mega trade. Honestly, definitely has potential because of how the extension of the US dollar pairs are. But even if we leave a gap here and we start pushing up further, we'll take a message from the market and deal with it. But understand that there's these possibilities on the table, so there's definitely some money to be made. We could see how this gets there. Wait and see. We could even tap into here, have a near miss to this. Let's just wait and see. I mean, at the moment it's still too premature, but it's evolved. It's now something completely different to what it was. We just have to take it as it comes. So that's basically USD CAD. Euro CAD, I think, is also a really nice pair. Just at the moment, not anything there for me to take. Still very neutral with this. I will understand that there is a mini gap here, and I'll just put it in here, gap, and then put it to the bottom. So there's a gap there. We haven't actually filled that gap at all. So at the end of the day, I'll just still be patient with this, see how this develops. It is what it is. At the end of the day, probably won't be on watch for next week because we're not very close to it, but looking good. We know we had the mini double top just below the gap anyway, but we haven't filled it, so I will wait for that fill. And then Aussie Swiss was the missed trade for me. This was the one I've been counting on for some time. Like I said, it's funny because I actually took the trade and then I closed it because I was going to sleep, and I just thought, so at the end of the day I did take the trade. I just decided not to hold it. Love it though, honestly, phenomenal. It was a bit weird because this pair moves, but it's not huge movements as well. So if we look at a 10 pip on this, which was at the high over here, just over here, and it was covering me just about there, and I'll tell you why I took it in a second, and I didn't wait for this potential pattern, because obviously we knew that this line was always non-confirmed. It wasn't really coming from anything majorly significant, but it was a reference point. But then we also knew that this was a possibility. However, yeah, so we saw this sort of corrective middle section, we saw the push up, it goes to push up, and I was like, you know, sitting over here, this would be a phenomenal place to be entering this position, and you know, I'd be running roughly around about 7.86%. Oh dear, you know, that would have been the trade. It's just this, like I said, this week's been a lot of missed trades, a lot of percentage missed, probably in the region of somewhere in the region of 20 to 30% missed this week. But then again, like, it's okay, because nothing gained, nothing lost, right? Just a bunch of lessons, a lot of volatility in the market. But the nice thing about this is when the volatility hit, price was over here, so I knew that we haven't actually made it here yet, so there was still room for price to get there. And when price did get there, it was late at night. It was, for me, it was roughly around about high spread hours. But then even with high spread, there was time to mitigate the risk, because if I did take the trade here, which would have been high spread time, which was roughly around about just an hour before high spreads, you can see that price did trickle lower, and then after, when spreads closed off, there was a little trade in there which could have been taken as well, and then yeah, then you could be running. But anyway, who cares? Like, you know, genuinely does not even matter. There'll be so much more opportunity. Wait for the next trade. Sick opportunity though, guys, honestly phenomenal. So that basically wraps up my outlook for Wednesday mid-market breakdown. Like I said, just a lot of missed trades. What I'm actually waiting for now, so looking at Euro Aussie, I don't know if Euro Aussie will be ready this week. Maybe, maybe not. Probably gearing up for next week most likely, or potentially the week after. So that one, I wouldn't really be wasting too much time focusing on it. Even if it did start selling off from here, it is what it is. Like I said, it is not something that I really care much for at this point. The next one is GA. I think GA definitely has some bull momentum in it, so I'm going to leave that one alone. GBP CAD as well. There's room for an entry over here, but with how price is, I'm not going to entertain that. GBP Yen, I think GBP Yen is possibly going to be a tomorrow trade at this point, or later, or a bit next week. GBP Yen, sorry, that was CAD Yen. GBP Yen will be possible. I mean, look, if GBP Yen starts to sell off, I'm going to get involved in that for sure. It's just a matter of timing. Could be a missed trade, maybe a very good trade. At the moment, there's not much. Just, do you know what? I don't really care much about the 1, 2, 3 at this point. I think it's more so that we haven't really tapped into that override. So I will wait for that, and then when we do get that, I'll see where that goes. So I'll definitely keep that on watch. EJ, you know, I think EJ has room to really play around with people. I don't know if this is going to be the best trade, if this is going to be a good or bad trade, but if you want to take that risk, you can take that risk. There's a possibility it could play out to go lower, but I think given how price is, I think we could just aggressively start pushing up and take people out. So I wouldn't want to even touch that, especially in that area. I think there'll be a lot of volatility, a lot of fight in it. USD Yen, like I said, still got some room for bull movements. Do I want to be looking for a long position? You could entertain it. Absolutely, you could entertain a long position here, but you have to ask yourself at what risk. And to be honest, like, given how the DXY is moving, I think you'd be good. I think you'd genuinely be good for a long position here. These corrections sometimes are very, very good. You could take in a 30 pip stop loss. Maybe if you even took it from now, 20 pips. Just take a little bit more risk that way. And then to the high, you could be looking at maybe, that could be a good trade. It could be a good trade, but at the same time, it's not a trade that personally I would say is your best trades to take. It's just a possible trade there. Euro USD, same situation. Like I said, if if this goes bullish and this comes down a little bit more, we might get a better refined entry somewhere, and then you might get a better refined entry down here, and that could be something that would be a little bit more valuable, where you could potentially squeeze in around about 10 pips. If you can squeeze in 10 pips there to this high, that becomes a little bit of a better position. So I think personally that could be one to keep an eye on for sure. Keep an eye on that position for sure, because I think that could be your boss man position if you're going to be taking a position today. Let's keep an eye on that anyway, just to watch it out for. Do I want to take EU? Sorry. I think EU would definitely be a nice position too, so I'll keep that on watch as well. Let's monitor them all and see how they play out. AU missed, gone. Yeah, and then USD CAD needs some time to basically develop. Euro CAD needs time to develop now, and Aussie Swiss needs time to develop further. We might see a rebound from the low, but you know, it's unlikely. It could just kind of push off, create some sort of corrections down here, and then go further. So still room to get involved on this. Don't just cross it off the board because we've missed that now. There could be more room for better trades here. This just gives us more for confidence now, saying that, you know, we are still moving in the direction. Nothing has really changed. So overall, I would be very much happy with how everything has played out, even though that, you know, I've missed some trades here and there. You have to understand that sometimes missing a trade, maybe it's just a part of the plan, you know, it's part of the bigger plan. We had to miss these trades because we're going to get into something even better. But also at the same time, you know, you have, like I said, sometimes it's better to just sit back in the back seat and just watch than to be in the driving seat, because when you can just see these play out, you get so much more knowledge and you learn so much about yourself. And I think personally, like, even missing these trades, something that I'm really happy with compared to myself previously, is the older version of myself, is I would have FOMO'd and taken some ridiculously stupid positions and maybe lost 1% or 2% here. And at the end of the day, I've evolved from that version of myself, and you need to look at evolving for yourselves as well if you haven't, because honestly, only when you make those steps to take those changes and say, okay, cool, I've missed the trade that I wanted, that's it, I'm gonna have to wait for the next one. Could be in a couple days, could be in a week's time, it doesn't matter, but I'm gonna take advantage when it does come. And if I miss it again, I miss it again. You know, I've missed what, 6-7 trades this week. Who cares, honestly? Like, imagine next week I caught 6 or 7 trades. What difference would that make? You know, we're looking at 30% on the portfolio and running right now currently. If we're looking at probably even more than that, maybe even 40% if we add EJ in there as well from Monday, which we forecasted on when the market was closed. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's so many different things that one person can learn from just being patient and disciplined. So I hope if you've learned anything from this video, that it's being patient, disciplined, and accepting the fact that you're going to miss trades is basically a part of the game, and that you can take that moving forward and it's going to make you a better trader. Then that's even better. And remember, if you're trading with low risk like myself, let's say 0.3% to 0.5%, but mostly 0.3, you know, even if you did catch a trade and you missed out on 6%, it doesn't really matter. That's probably like 2% anyway. But it's not about the profit that you're making, it's about the quality of the position. And you know, if we just talk about quality for a second, you know, there's quality in here, there's quality in here, probably quality in there for the reduced quality, more quality in here, more quality in there. You know, there's trading opportunities everywhere, and I can see them from the higher time frame all the way on the way down. Imagine if you're looking at this, and this is 4-hour time frame, there's a trade in here which is on the 30th, there's a trade in there, let's say, yeah, right there on the 31st, and then on the 2nd, and then let's say in here somewhere between the 6th, yep, and then in here between the 9th and 13th, and then certainly on the 22nd, 27th, the 3rd. So definitely I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 trades in there, and I promise you probably would have been some phenomenal sort of profits in there alone just to that run. So you know, I just want you to walk away today and just realize that no matter how many trades you've missed, no matter how many trades you've taken, it doesn't matter. You're learning, you're improving, and you're working on yourself, and that's the most important thing. So thanks for watching today, and if you have any comments, please drop them below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button, and I look forward to catching you in the next video.